Hey there, welcome to the HerBusiness podcast, where we dive into the stories of entrepreneurs making their mark. I'm your host, Susie Daphnis. I'm the CEO at HerBusiness, and I'm thrilled to bring you another episode filled with insights, strategies, and stories to help your business. Over the next few episodes, we're going to focus on the topic of technology, which is an essential and often overlooked aspect of business. It's like having a secret weapon to get amazing results with way less effort. The trick is to know exactly what tech tools you need and what you can totally skip. Say, for example, scheduling and batching your content, for example, instead of feeling overwhelmed by a strict marketing schedule, using technology makes it a breeze. And imagine automating how clients get onboarded into your world. That is a game changer. It frees up loads of time and effort so that you can focus on delivering what you've promised. Now, inside the HerBusiness community, we're equipping our members with free technology-related resources like masterclasses, podcasts, free templates, and even an accountability challenge to help them improve this part of their business. We're spotlighting this growth zone because we find that most small business owners don't pay enough attention to how much of a difference the right technology systems can make in our workflow, our business growth, and our profit. So for this week's episode, I had the wonderful experience of sitting down with Clate Mask, a man that wears many hats. Not only is he the author of the New York Times best-selling book, Conquer the Chaos, but he's also the CEO and co-founder of a company you might have heard of, KEAP. Yep, Clate is in charge of running one of the most in-demand CRMs in the world. Now, we actually use KEAP internally on the HerBusiness team for our email marketing, order forms, client communications, and client history, all the things we need to keep things running smoothly. So trust me when I say that Clate is a master of organization and systems and stopping chaos in its tracks. So going into this interview, I was anticipating organizational and techie gold, which, believe me, is in store for you during this episode, but you'll also get expert insights on how to systemize your marketing, your people, your finances, and your strategic growth. But something I wasn't expecting to talk about with Clate is the concept of chaos in the mind. Now, running a business is inherently a chaotic experience. I think you'll agree. There's always a ton of tasks on our to-do list, 100 people to get back to, internal and external problem solving, and about 1 million things to address on any given day. And in the midst of all these different pockets of chaos going on in our day-to-day lives, we often overlook an extremely important source of that chaos, our very own brains. So you're going to hear Clate talk extensively about the chaos in the mind and how our mindset is the first area of chaos that must be tackled. Now, during the episode, you'll hear him bring up various strategies that you can implement into your day-to-day that will help reset how you think about your day-to-day tasks, your time management as a whole, and how your vision is at the center of your business. He's got some really practical and tactical methods to address this mental chaos, methods that aren't all that different from those used for workflows or task management. All right, I'll let Clate take over from here. Let's dive in. Hey, Clate, great to see you.
Great to see you too, Susie. Great to be with you.
Congratulations on the updated, apparently totally rewritten version of Conquer the Chaos. I'm excited to dive in.
Oh, thank you. It is really great. It's a fun book. I'm excited for people to get it.
So it's been about 20 years, maybe more, that you've been working with small businesses.
Yep.
What are some of the discoveries you made about the chaos that they were experiencing in their businesses as they were growing them?
Yeah. One thing is that they grow in a stair-step fashion. So, it's not usually linear growth. Normally what happens is they'll grow and then they'll kind of plateau and then grow and plateau. And I call this the ones and threes of revenue. Usually what happens is they grow and then they kind of plateau at 100,000. They grow and plateau at 300,000, grow and plateau at 1 million.
Right.
And sometimes you get stuck at the ones and threes for a while. And there's some chaos that's specific to the stage changes. And so that's one kind of chaos. Another kind of chaos is the brand new startup chaos, when you're just trying to figure out your products and your services. And that's a type of chaos as well. But the real kind of endemic chaos, the stuff that everybody experiences in small business, is because there just aren't enough hours in the day to get done everything that needs to get done. And that's usually because of the underlying processes are not laid out clearly, and they haven't been systematized. So it's a systems and process issue that causes us to be in reactive mode and in chaos, and it's almost universal across small businesses.
Right. And I guess if we think about it, the processes and systems you need when you're a solopreneur working out of your guest room are different when you have staff and you have tons of customers and multiple types of products and services. So that makes total sense. Yep. You discovered that business success is based on what you call a hierarchy, and money is not the only thing in that hierarchy. Yeah. Could you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, when we get started, we usually kind of have this, there's maybe a financial goal. Maybe it's to replace the income we had from a job, or, maybe it's hitting a certain level of income from the business. But usually what entrepreneurs find is that once they get to that level, what they really want is more time. And so time becomes really critical. Right. And then people will they'll say, what, I'm working I got the money that I want, working the time that I want, but there's some unpleasant things, some of the kind of work they need to do, some of the clients they need to work with, some of the projects they need to take on, or the tasks they're doing. And that's where they recognize that I might have money and I might have time, but I really don't have control over my business and my life the way I want to. And so control is the third level on the hierarchy. And then when you get money and you get time and you get control and you're feeling like, hey, things are going really well, what happens is entrepreneurs really want to make a serious impact on their market, the world, the way that they've taken entrepreneurship to heart. So that's the hierarchy. It's money, and then time, and then control, and then impact. And at the very top, we call it freedom. And that's what we really want. We want freedom in all of those forms: money, time, control, and impact.
I have totally noticed that with the women in the HerBusiness community, that in the beginning, we don't have money, but we have time. So we can come along to all the webinars and do all the things. And then as we get a little more successful, it's like, I'm going to pay to expedite things, because time is more important. I love that. And that's such a great framework. The book is Conquer the Chaos. As a business owner who's grown this particular business for 20-something years, what is some of the chaos that you've experienced as you've grown?
Yeah. Well, in the early stages, and let me just say this because I think it's important. I'll just share this with you briefly, because I understand the early stages of chaos, and they're when you're just trying to get the business going. And it's all, virtually everybody's experienced this. And, when we were in our very early days, it was super tough. We had 4 kids, and Sharice was taking care of the kids, and I was trying to get the business off the ground. And we were about 2 years in, and I could see that it was going to work. We were past that point of like, is this going to work? I could see it would, but she couldn't yet see it. And she kept telling me, hey, you need to go look for a real job, and it's just time. And I'd say, hun, we're almost there. Like, it's getting better. It's getting better. And finally one night she just said, it's not getting better for me. Yeah, I need you to go look for a job. And I said, okay, I will. And I said, the next day I went into the office, and she said, no. Oh, she said, promise me it'll be the next, like, tomorrow when you go to work. And I said, okay, I will. But I really didn't want to. And I really didn't believe that the business wasn't going to work at that point. Well, I went into the office that day, and as happens to entrepreneurs virtually every day, the business just sort of consumed me, enveloped me. And I was driving home that night, and I hadn't done any job searching. And I felt awful because I hadn't done what I said I was going to do. And I felt nervous because the marriage was at a very tense point. This was a very difficult situation. And we'd been kind of pulling apart as I was trying to get the business working. So I was very nervous. I walked into the house that day, and I found Sharice, and she turned around and looked at me, and she said, did you look for a job today? And I said, no. And she came over to me, and I was kind of bracing, and she put her arms around me and gave me a really big hug. And I was kind of surprised. And then I kind of tried to pull back, and she held on really tight. And then I realized she was shaking. And then I realized she was crying. And then I started crying. I didn't even know why. And finally she kind of let go. And I said, well, what's going on? And she said, everything's going to be okay. Just, God knows what we're doing. Just keep going. And, when you're in those hard times and you're trying to make it work, and virtually every entrepreneur has been through their own keep going story, that, when that happened, I was like, I felt energized and fueled to go figure out whatever we needed to conquer whatever mountain it was. And that, I think, is that's what the early days of chaos looks like, where there's so much to do. You're burning the midnight oil, and you're not making ends meet. But, I want to make sure that people hear when I talk about the normal chaos that happens later, as you and I talked about. I don't want to just skip over that startup chaos. That's pretty tough for people. And I hope that people don't quit when they're almost there, because I just shudder to think what would have happened if we would have quit, if we would have just decided we couldn't do it. And I'm so grateful for her faith and her backing and support that we were able to push through that. So I needed to share that, because the normal chaos that we experience every day, that our customers experience, small businesses experience, is more about what happens once, like you said, you've got customers and you've got a lot going on, and really it's just there's too much. You can't do it all. There aren't enough hours in the day, and so the things start to slip, and you start to forget things, and projects and deadlines and leads and customers begin to slip through the cracks, and team members are not quite sure what they're doing, and they're making mistakes and feeling frustrated and getting blamed, and customers are unhappy, and your spouse is looking at you like, hey, is this really the freedom we signed up for? Like, what is this?
Lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah, it was such a great lifestyle business, right? So that's what I'm so passionate about. And that's what I've seen over the years. And it really comes down to when you get to the very core of it, it's that the business owner hasn't mapped out their business. They haven't laid out, well, what happens when we get a lead, and then what happens, and what's supposed to happen in this order, and who does what and when, and how do we get that converted into a client? And then once the client comes on board, what are the 12 things that need to happen in the right order to have that be a great client experience? And how do what happens 30 days later and 60 days later, and how do we follow up with them down the road? And there's just so many things. And because there's so much going on, people don't stop and do that work to lay out the map of their business. And I think
is such an important part of what you do and your team does to support business owners to map out those plans.
Yep. That's really the source of the chaos, when you don't have that map, and then when you haven't figured out how to turn that map of processes into automated procedures.
What I love about the book is that you deal with very practical ways to conquer the chaos, but you also talk about the inner game, which is very close to my heart. And you talk about the fact that small business chaos is in the mind even more than in the physical world. How does being able to manage what's going on in here and here impact our success?
It's everything. I tell people, if you don't win the battle for the mind, you're not going to win the battle in your business. And it really is, it's as simple as whether you believe you're right, or whether you believe you can, you believe you can't, you're right. And so you've got to really, especially for entrepreneurs, and especially in those first 3 years, our stats tell us that on average it takes about 3 years for a business to get to that point where, okay, it's going to be fine, it's going to be successful, but it takes about 3 years. Well, during those 3 years, as you know, Susie, there is all kinds of feedback that we're getting constantly that's suggesting that this isn't going to work. And if we're not stronger than that feedback in our minds, and if we're not committed to it in our hearts, then we will succumb to that feedback, because it takes a little bit of irrationality to get through those first 3 years. And so that's why I say it's the battle between the ears that you've got to win. And there are certain things to do every day to cultivate that mindset of success, so you overcome the mental chaos.
Well, you've got 10 very tactical things that we can do to cultivate that success mindset. Would you give us a couple of those?
Yeah. My number one favorite is what I call morning mastery. And it's really a routine that every entrepreneur needs in the morning to nurture their mind, body, and spirit. And I recommend 30 minutes for each. You can do a 20 minutes for each version in an hour, and you can even do a very short version in like 10 minutes. But you need to do yourself that favor and set your day with the right standard, because if you don't set your day that way and get to a good place in your mind, body, and soul, then you end up having kind of getting easily set off by different things that are going to happen during the day. And they will happen, as you and I both know. There are going to be all kinds of things that happen during the day. So my number one recommendation on cultivating a mindset for success is invest in your morning routine. Ideally, 60 to 90 minutes, but if you can only do 10, have a 10-minute version and a 30-minute version, whatever it is that you can do, you owe it to yourself as an entrepreneur to design your day, be intentional at the beginning of the day, and get in that good mind space. So that's number one. A second one that I talk about a lot is really, it's about the mind and how we handle the things that come to us during the day. Our minds are, I say they're meaning-making machines. They make meaning out of all the things that come at us during the day. And most of the time, they're operating very, very quickly, and the meaning that they're making isn't necessarily serving us well. And so what I recommend is people 3 times during the day, they pause and they just be introspective for a minute to see, are there any meanings that I've made, that my mind has made? In other words, these are called thoughts.
Yes.
Are there any meanings that my mind has made? Are there any thoughts that are not serving me well? And if you pause 3 times during the day and reflect on that and identify a thought, and you go, oh yeah, at about 10:30 this morning, this employee said this to me and it just bothered me the way they handled it, whatever. And then if you'll notice, you created a thought about that and you thought, that employee is not a very good employee. Or let's just use that as an example. Well, once you identify the thought, then I call it the ABC method. So A, ask yourself if it's really true. And that means you slow it down and you go, okay, I made a snap judgment. Is it really true? And by the way, your ego will usually fire right back at you. Of course it's true, you idiot. I just said it. So you have to really slow it down and go, is it really true? And that's A, ask yourself if it's really true. B, be mindful of who you are when you hold that thought as true. So in other words, how's it working for you? If you think this thing is true, is it working? Well, if it's really irritating you, it's really bothering you, it might not be true. And you might need to give a little grace to say, well, let me stop and think about this because it's not working well for me. And then the C is change the thought just a little bit. If you can change it 180 degrees, if you're irritated with your spouse or child or family member and it's causing real problems, can you turn that around 180 degrees and find the love in it? Can you, if it's the employee situation, can you loosen it up? Can you change it just a little bit and notice something good that they did recently? If you will pause during the day and practice the ABC method, ask if the thought is true, be mindful of who you are when you hold it as true, and change that thought. If 180 degrees, great, but even if just 1 or 2 degrees, it'll loosen it up. That will help you manage the mind and conquer the chaos that's going on inside of there.
I can feel my body relaxing just as you're telling that, Keith, sharing that example. I love it. You say that after mindset, vision is the most foundational key to achieving balanced growth in both our businesses and in our lives. Could you speak a little bit to that, Clate?
Yeah, vision is the second of the personal keys. So there are 3 personal keys, 3 business keys. The book is Conquer the Chaos, the 6 keys to success for entrepreneurs. And the second personal key is vision. A lot of times people think when I'm talking about keys to success for entrepreneurs and I say vision, they might think that's the business vision. But it's actually the life vision. And the business needs to fit inside of the life vision. If we don't get clear on our life vision as entrepreneurs, the business becomes so demanding and it pulls us so much into the business that it begins to control and consume us. And so if we don't set an exciting life vision that the business fits into, then we are prone to being knocked off balance. We are prone to sacrificing our priorities. We're prone to making trade-offs ever so subtly, little by little over time, that may get us into a place down the road of regret or worse. So that's why I say vision, after mindset, vision is the most foundational because everything else that we do in our business and our personal lives fits into that. So if we're not operating with a vision that we're clear on, then we are a bit rudderless as we go through entrepreneurial life.
I love that. And I totally agree. Because business can be so consuming, but if it's not heading us towards ultimately the lifestyle, and I was joking earlier about lifestyle, but that life that we want, then we're being busy for a lot of time that we're not with family, that we're not at the gym, that we're not doing other things, perhaps heading in the wrong direction. What if we have got a great business vision and we've got our personal vision, but somehow the chaos in business takes us off track and we get caught up in the busyness of business? What are some of the things that we can do to give us a calm perspective and help us get closer to achieving our goals?
Yeah, you bet. The reality is there's too much to do in small business. There really is. It's not possible to get it all done unless we tip the scales in our favor with what I call the great game changer for small businesses, and that is automation. Because automation will actually replicate us. It will replicate our efforts. It enables us to get so much more out of what we have. And so, I like to say it this way, that, well, let me start with kind of a foundational premise. When you get right down to it, we're usually trading hours for dollars in the game of business. But automation is the great game changer because it allows us to actually get stuff done in meaning we would normally have to invest hours, but we don't have to put any time into it. It's being done automatically and in the background. And it can be even a great game changer in the sense of the investment, because once you set it up, it continues to work for you and you don't have to keep paying for it. So it can be a very powerful thing. I have a good friend, Rory Vaden, who's helping me with my book, and he says, he's a longtime customer of ours, and he says, automation is to your time what compound interest is to your money. And that is a really great way to think about it, because when you think about your money that's earning interest for you, suddenly, you're getting more and more money. Well, automation is doing that and you're getting more and more time. It's literally creating time for you. And that's why I say when you automate, you actually calm the chaos, because you're getting rid of this overwhelming to-do list that you can't seem to get to, because the automation is actually doing the work for you. So that to me is, once you get to this place where you're like, okay, I've got a business that I really like, and I've got a life that is served well by the business, but there's just too much to do. That's where automation becomes the great game changer.
There are so many things that we could automate. Is there a place that you recommend to customers that they start when it comes to automation in their small business?
Yeah, there's two ways to think about this. One is to think about, well, where does it all start in my business? Well, it starts with kind of you collect a lead, and now you need to do something with that. So one way to think of it is, I'm going to think about my customer journey, that we call it the customer life cycle, where it starts, and then you begin automating through the customer life cycle. The other way to think about it, maybe a more practical and perhaps a more useful way, is where are you doing a lot of redundant, manual, repetitive work? So if you find yourself doing the same thing over and over, or you find a team member doing the same thing over and over, and it's very repetitive, it's very mundane, and it's like, this needs to be set up on automation. That's the other way to look at it. So whether you look at it from your business process, starting with your collecting a lead, or whether you look at it from the overwhelm that you're feeling, where you've just got too many things that are happening and you identify some things that are very repetitive and mundane, either of those approaches is effective.
I remember being introduced to your customer life cycle many, many years ago, and it really helped me and my team put in place things that do save us time and, as a result, money. And it's not a set and forget, but it's such a great process to look at what is the customer experience, because ultimately they're number one.
Right.
And what of that can we take the mundane, as you said, and the repetitive, and free up our team to do perhaps more creative work. So that is outlined inside the book. I want to talk a little bit about strategy and ask you how you, as a very successful business owner, think about strategy in a business. What do you see as the core components of a good business strategy?
Yeah. First, I break out company strategy from customer strategy. And the customer strategy is what you just described, the customer life cycle, what happens, then what happens, all the way through. I think you're asking about the company strategy. And
Correct.
I think that's really important for people to recognize that company strategy, when you get right down to it, because it's such a big word and it means so many different things. You ask 20 people what strategy means, you're going to get 20 different answers. When you really boil it down, strategy is about how you focus your resources in a very intentional way to achieve the goals that you're after. You don't have unlimited resources, so you can't do everything. So you've got to focus them. You've got to get it boiled down and lined up to the goals that you're trying to achieve. So with that very general basic definition, what I help people understand is start with why. Love Simon Sinek's, start with why you're doing what you're doing. Because you can't get to strategy of what to do if you're not first clear on why you're doing what you do. Mm. So you get clear on your why. We call this purpose. KEAP's purpose is to liberate and empower entrepreneurs to strengthen families, communities, and economies. Whatever your purpose is, you want to get clear on why you do what you do, because that's where there's so much power in it. And when you connect your what to your why, then it starts to get really, really effective. So start with why. And then the other thing that we help people do or encourage people to do is after you get your purpose, get your values, because this is how you go about operating. And it'll just help you strategically as you hire people, as you fire people, as you coach people to know, hey, we do this according to our core values. Once you've got your purpose and values, now you're ready to create your mission. And the mission is what you're going to accomplish in the next 3 years. And this is where the strategy really gets concrete, because you're saying, okay, in the next 3 years, we're going to accomplish X with Y milestones for Z type of customer. So you get clear on your customer, your goals, and how you'd measure that. And once you can state that in a really succinct way, now you've got the makings of your strategy that you can then go tie your goals to in a short-term way to achieve those longer-term goals. So purpose, values, 3-year mission, that gets you clear on what you're up to, and then your goals can ladder up to that to help you achieve them.
I really love that model. And once we've got the 3-year, I know something we do inside of our community, we look at, okay, what is like the highest purpose goal over the next year? And then we plan and we check in quarterly and you build it up. But you do need, I totally agree, to start with that very big picture. Now, strategy, I think, comes firstly from us as business leaders. And even if we don't feel like we were born a leader, I know that your belief is that you can learn to become a great leader, but first you need to think like a CEO. What does that look like?
Yeah, I love it. So I learned this from one of our investors many years ago. She said, hey, after they'd, invested a very sizable check, we built the business up to about 10 million in annual revenue. And then we went and got venture capital. And so they'd put a big check in and, invested a lot of money. And she said, now don't forget the 3 jobs of the CEO. And I kind of tuned in and she said, set the vision, build the team. And then she said, don't run out of money.
Good tip.
The way I say it is set the vision, build the team, get the resources. And that's really what the CEO's job is. It's not to do. Notice I didn't say anything there about executing the strategy. I didn't say, no, it's set the vision, which is about setting this, you work with your team to set the purpose, values, mission, like I just described. And I love and I completely agree with your point. Once you've got your 3-year, you back it down to 1 year, break it into quarterly, and ideally down into monthly, weekly. So set the vision that's the most important job of the CEO. That's the most important job. And then the second thing is build the team that's going to execute the vision. And then the third team is get the resources, always attracting resources, whether that's the right talent or the right capital or the right partners or the right banking relationship or whatever that is. Set the vision, build the team, get the resources.
I love it. We are building a community of female CEOs who are taking leadership. They're building thriving, profitable businesses. What are some of the metrics that you pay attention to in your business that let you know that you're on track?
Yeah. In a software company, there's kind of a really important metric that is your customer lifetime value versus your customer acquisition cost. So it's telling you how much is a customer worth versus how much does it cost to acquire that customer. In any business that's useful, it's especially useful in a business where customers don't pay you all up front. They're paying you in a monthly subscription over time. Well, you have to know, well, what's that lifetime value going to be? Because then that helps you understand what you can afford to spend to acquire a customer. I think those numbers, lifetime value and customer acquisition cost, are really valuable, really important for any business owner to have, but especially if you have a subscription-based business.
Yeah, I was talking with someone yesterday, and I don't know that she does have a subscription-based business, but still, that was one of her measures as well. Is this tells me how much I can invest in getting a new client. It tells me that I should focus on contributing valuable products and services to my existing customers versus always chasing the new customer. So powerful.
Exactly.
With profit and revenue, I just want to sit on this for a little bit more. We found that a lot of business owners, especially as they're growing, breaking through the 6-figure mark and heading towards 7 figures, revenue was one of the key things they were looking at and not profit. How do you like to advise business owners to think about their numbers in business?
I love that you asked this question, because when my co-founder and I wrote the first edition of the book many years ago, we really thought about revenue growth. And, our product was marketing automation. So it was more about the marketing and driving that revenue growth. But what I've found in 14 years since the original edition of the book is that the profit and the time and the freedom that the business owners experience, that's where the real value is. And too often what we see is business owners the revenue is growing and there's a certain pride and satisfaction that comes with that. But all too often it's happening inefficiently and the profit is not flowing. And there's too much time that's having to be invested for that profit. So I'm a really big believer, especially as we've expanded what we do to be business automation that includes, automation across the entire business. It really is to help that business owner get the profit, the time, the freedom, the control that they're after, and not be quite so myopically focused on the top line revenue.
One of the things that has really supported me in staying on track, in understanding my business and getting the right advice, has been to be part of, masterminds, and to have a board of advisors and an advisory board and like a regular board and an advisory board. And, have any of those structures been useful for you in your years of business?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I can't recommend enough peer groups, mastermind groups, coaching for entrepreneurs. I mean, I've done this my whole career, will continue to do it. I've also been in leading and teaching those a lot. I mean, there's just so much value in them. And then additionally, it is wise to have a board of advisors, particularly once you get to where, once you pass 7 figures, you're to a place where it's really helpful to have people that have your best interests at heart, are able to give you some perspective. So yeah, I think it's a fantastic and wise practice.
At HerBusiness, we have a tagline, which is do what you love every day. What might an ideal day, you working in your business, look like where you feel like I'm doing what I love? Yeah.
You know what? I love to teach. I love it. My dad's a teacher. My mom, I think, is at her heart, she's a teacher, although she was an entrepreneur and built a design business, interior design business. But I think that they're both great teachers, and I just found there's just so much joy and satisfaction in teaching. So my ideal day looks like spending time with my executive team, all getting aligned, empowering everybody to teach their orgs, being able to have opportunities like this to be able to just share and teach. I just love it. This is I don't know if teaching is the way people would describe it, but when I say teaching, I mean very generally just sharing what I've learned. And it's always, and I always find that in teaching, there's a reciprocal nature to it. I'm always learning as I teach, and I love learning. Like, one of my core values is I'm always learning. And so to me, teaching is maybe the best form of learning, and it's also edifying other people in the process. So my ideal day looks like a lot of teaching. It looks like doing that with employees, customers, partners. It looks like a little bit of time to be quiet and be in learning. It looks like time for me to be kind of sharpening the saw a little bit, just getting a little better in whatever it is, because I'm always trying to grow and improve.
You are singing my song, Clate. The book is Conquer the Chaos. Check out the link alongside this interview. And, of course, you can get the book at your favourite online or brick-and-mortar bookstore. Is there anything you'd like to leave us with, Clate?
They can learn more about what we're doing at conquerthechaosbook.com. And if anybody is wanting to get a little help in their customer life cycle, how to automate more effectively, to kind of identify the places where the money and time are leaking out of the business, they can go to keap.com/playbook. And we have an expert session that you can go through for free. And then we provide a customized growth and freedom playbook with the 3 things that you should be doing in your business, specific to your business, that will help you get more growth, profit, and freedom. So that's keap.com/playbook.
Sorry, keap.com/playbook. We'll pop that link alongside this interview as well. Thank you so much for your time, Clate. It's been great speaking with you, and all the best with the book.
Thanks so much, Susie. This has been fantastic. Thanks for allowing me to be a part of the HerBusiness community.
Now, during the interview, Clate tackled a hurdle I see all the time with established business owners: plateauing. It's a problem that's come up time and time again in my own journey of owning and running multiple businesses, and I get asked questions about this often by HerBusiness members. Questions like, why are my profits plateauing? What can I do to break out of that standstill? How can I achieve consistent and reliable growth year on year? And I think Clate really nails this one on the head when he talks about the importance of having a detailed, structured plan and the systems in place to make that plan run smoothly. Now, he broke it down into his idea of stair-step growth. When businesses get stuck at various stages, the $100,000 mark, the $300,000 mark, and the $1 million mark. If we can't see the next step in our trajectory, or we don't picture exactly what that new level of success looks like, how are we supposed to get there? And getting unstuck really relies on the vision and planning you set up for yourself. So if, for example, your marketing systems are bogged down and you're barely handling your client load, it's definitely not going to get any better if you expand without addressing that problem. Or maybe your internal workflow doesn't include strong task management and delegation. Adding to your team, even if you need the help, is only going to create more chaos. So to reach the milestones that we set for ourselves, we have to have clear goals and systems to get us there, whether that's in marketing, people management, financial planning, or strategic growth. And we have so many resources on the topics of technology and systems and planning inside the HerBusiness Network for our members. So if you would like to join us and start creating your big business goals, we've now made places available inside the HerBusiness Network. And you can learn more and join by heading over to herbusinessnetwork.com today. Now, I have put together a summary of what we've covered in today's episode, as well as links to learn more about KEAP, the CRM that Clate's company developed, and to buy a copy of the newly released Conquer the Chaos book by Clate. You can get that information over at herbusiness.com/259. That's herbusiness.com/259. So join us for the next episode for more inspiring stories and lessons from inspiring entrepreneurs. I love doing this show for you, and I wanted to say how much I appreciate you listening and sharing the show with your friends. I love it when I get a comment from you on what you enjoyed and implemented. It does make my day. So you can email me at podcast@herbusiness.com, whether you have a question, whether you have a comment. And if you're new to the show, be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening. And if you enjoyed this episode or any episode of the show, I would love it if you would do me 2 favors. Yes, I'm going to be greedy and ask for 2. First is share this episode with a friend who you think needs help getting out of chaos. The second is to head on over to Apple Podcasts and give us a rating or a review. I would appreciate it so much. It helps us spread this podcast to more and more women business owners so that they can grow their businesses. Thank you for being here. Join me next time right here on the HerBusiness podcast. Bye for now.